take over up and running.
Thank you. I'll repeat agenda item 3 declaration. No, sorry. Dominique. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from councillors Catherine Bonera, Ron Burnett, Nick Byrne, Alan Slade and Jane Watkins.
Okay. Are there any further apologies, please, from the floor? Sorry. Yes, we're picking Byrne up, yes. Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Dareth Harris, Monitoring Officer and Assistant Chief Legal Officer, have you any advice to members, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I'm aware that Councillor Dave Thomas wishes to declare a personal interest in relation to a question he is going to ask under the member questions, as he has a local business. So if I could ask Councillor Thomas to confirm that.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. I'm not aware of any other interest to declare at this stage, but would like to give some advice to members with regard to the Torfaen Education Service post-inspection report. If you ask a question or enter into a debate about a specific school, when that report is being discussed, you can consider declaring an interest at that time. Thank you, Presiding Member.
Thank you, Dareth. Any other declarations of interest that anybody wishes to declare? That takes us to agenda item 4.
Please, Chair. Yes, please, Chair. I did have my hand up. In relation to Councillor Thomas's question, I also run a small business. I don't know if it's relevant.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. No, because Councillor Thomas is asking the question, then he has to declare the interest, but any other members don't need to declare an interest if they have any connection with any businesses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Thank you, Dareth. Agenda item 4, confirmation of council minutes for the 24th of October 2023, starting on page 5 of your agenda. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes, and if not, I will take them as approved. Take those as approved, thank you. Takes us to agenda item 5, update on actions. Members, the updates on what has been done to implement our previous decisions start on page 21 of the agenda. Could you please indicate whether you have any questions or comments? I ask members whether they agree to note the update on actions then, please. Thank you, they noted. Takes us to agenda item 6, which is receipt of petitions. There are no petitions, so we'll move on to agenda item 7. Agenda item 7, public question time. There are 2 public questions today. I'll just get my sheets. The first question I've been asked to read out on behalf of Barbara Southall. And question 1 reads, when council meetings and the nature of the building limits access to residents of the county borough through disabilities, either as mobility, emotional or protected characteristics, thus, for those with disabilities, because the Constitution requires the questioner 4.16.3 to ask the question in the meeting, they cannot access. How does the council see itself as forwarding standards of diversity and equality values? And Councillor Hunt, the leader, is going to answer this, please.
Thank you, Presiding Member, and thank you for the question. Just to confirm, an answer has been given by email confirming the correct situation. However, to confirm to members, appropriate arrangements can be made for people to either ask questions in person. The building has a number of adaptations to allow disabled access, including disabled parking spaces. Also, questions can be asked via the Teams link remotely to give members of the public the option to do that. Arrangements can be made for members to ask questions via Teams, or members of the public can ask questions via a member, including the presiding member. So that's 3 ways that members of the public can ask questions to give the maximum possible access to everyone. I have raised the wording of paragraph 4.16 of the Constitution to make this as clear as possible, and will consult with the members' Constitutional Working Party on this.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Question 2 is Alison Grimson and Gail Edwards. I know Alison isn't available. Gail is here this morning. Do you wish to come down to ask a question, please?
Morning. Between me and my sister, and we have been a resident of the council, taxpayer of Torfaen Borough Council for over 45 years. Since 2013 and 2014, respectively, we both currently live on Woodlands Resident Caravan Mobile Park home. Since 2017, we have had problems with the site licence and its attached conditions. The licence and its attached conditions are set and issued by the Torfaen County Borough Council. There are a huge number of site licence breaches on the park by site operatives, licence holders. We have previously been informed of these breaches in repetitive, numerous and lengthy emails. Residents don't understand why, then, does the TCBC not act appropriately to address these known breaches, which in many instances breach health, safety and well-being ethics. Why is the task, the issuing and the enforcement of the site licence, not undertaken by the licensing committee as laid out in the statutory regulations, local authority arrangements 399, to very disappointed taxpayers?
Thank you, Gaynor. Yeah, I believe Councillor Mandy Owen is going to answer your question.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for your question on behalf of you and your sister, for your question relating to the licence for the site issued by the Council under the Mobile Homes Wales Act 2013. The question concerns the process of granting a licence and enforcing breaches of its conditions, so I've separated my response into two parts to cover both matters. So the first part, why is this task of the issuing of the site licence not undertaken by the licensing committee as laid out in the statutory regulation, Local Authority Executive Arrangements 399? This question has been previously raised by the Qualifying Residents Association, representing residents of Woodlands Park, and has been addressed as part of a comprehensive internal investigation into allegations about the site. As the QRA have been advised, the Council's constitution delegates the decision to issue licences to the licensing committee. It further allows for the delegation of functions to officers at Appendix 10. The decision to issue the site licence was made by the Chief Officer of Neighbourhoods Planning and Public Protection in both 2016 and 2021 in accordance with that delegation. An identified action from the investigation is for a review to be undertaken of the delegation procedures to consider if there is any merit in changing the Council's existing arrangements for issuing licences under the Mobile Homes Wales Act 2013. Any amendment to the Constitution would be carried out in the usual way by recommendation to Council through the Constitution Working Group. Second part of the question, why is this task of the enforcement of the site licence not undertaken by the Licensing Committee as laid out in the statutory regulation, Local Authority Executive Arrangements 399? The Council's constitution delegates the function to assess compliance with site licence conditions to officers who are trained and competent to perform this role. After investigation, if contraventions are identified, this is dealt with by the officer in accordance with the Public Protection Service Enforcement and Compliance Policy.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Thank you very much, Gaynor. Thank you for coming to Council this morning. That takes us to agenda item 8, announcements of the leader and Chief Executive. Leader, do you have any announcements, please?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Member. First of all, I'd like to remind members of the raffle being taken place after the meeting. Thank you to Councillor Gaynor James for providing a raffle in aid of the Red Cross and their help for people currently experiencing the situation that's ongoing in Israel and Palestine. We'd like to thank all members and officers who've contributed so far and to thank Gaynor for raising funds for that very good cause. Secondly, I'd like to wish members, officers and everyone in our community a very happy Christmas. I know at this time of year there's lots of community events that go on that are too numerous to recognise, but I'd like to thank everyone who plays a part in those events and our staff for their hard work over the year and also members for their hard work this year too. Lastly, I'd like to commend Ysgol Panteg and all the other schools that have been inspected recently on some really excellent inspection results. And I'd like to welcome Ysgol Gyfun Gwynthlu down to the stage. I think they're going to give a presentation now on some of the work that they're doing. They've also been making great strides forward in the past year. I'd like to wish them a Nadolig Llawen and also welcome them down to give a presentation to members.
Thank you, Leader. Croeso Ysgol Gwynthlu. Not Gyfun anymore. Can I say what a pleasure it is to have young people coming into our council meeting. Thank you very much for attending this morning.
Bore da, diolch yn fawr iawn am wahodd ni heddiw, a rydyn ni wir yn werthfawrogi fe. Good morning, and we really do appreciate our invitation here today. I'm Tia, I'm the head girl at Ysgol Gymraeg Gwynthlu, and this is Tom, the head boy, and this is our lovely school council.
So, since last summer, we have taken a step back and have re-evaluated and developed our values across the school. And this was previously Courtesy, Cymreichdod a Cydweithio, which are key values that we have decided are very good, but we need to go deeper into detail and specify more. And these have now moved on to Cymru, where we focus on the Welsh identity. Courtesy, which focuses on inclusivity and equality. Cyfranoghi, which is where we focus on charity work, where we can raise money for certain organisations like Macmillan or Children in Need. And Cyflawni, where we focus on achievement of pupils as a whole and how we can push people to go into further education and higher education. And we also have Canaliadwy, where we focus on sustainability and how we can be more environmentally friendly, whether that is recycling or using less electricity and less resources that we can save for other opportunities. So we have had opportunities and visits from the Children's Commissioner. We have done Howley Holly Torfaen Young People, where we had the opportunity to ask questions and were given answers in the public, where it was very comfortable and people were very happy to ask questions. It was a big success for us, and we also had the opportunity to do Howley Holly with BBC Radio Cymru, which was a chance to really widen our voices rather than keeping it within a small group of individuals. We had the opportunity to ask questions and were given information on sexual health in schools and talks on vaping and antisocial behaviours and other issues that are rising at the moment in our schools. So firstly, I'd like to introduce Isaac, who can tell us a little bit more about the Welsh identity, and he's the head of the subcommittee where we focus on Welsh identity and how we can improve this throughout the school.
Thank you, Tom, for introducing me there. As you said, I'm in charge of the Welsh Identity Council. So what we actually focus on is Welsh identity and Welsh pride. So a big matter for us is Cymreichdod, which is Welsh speaking, and educating our students on more cultured parts of our traditions. We promote the Welsh language through music concerts and trips. For example, we took Year 8 pupils to a residential trip in Glanllyn in order to improve Welsh fluency, and after the trip we could really tell a difference between how the trip had improved their fluency, especially outside of the classroom. As a school, we believe that in order to reach our goal of 1 million speakers by 2050, we have to hear the difference down here in the south, because this is where the growth is going to really show, and this is how we're going to revive our language. As of September 22, we welcomed our Gladys students to Gwynllew. Gladys is our primary school on campus, and they're a part of our community. And as a sixth form, we've been going to Gladys and helping in numeracy and literacy and social skills in order to welcome them to our community. And later on this week, we're holding a Christmas fair where we have Year 11 students with their own stalls. And as a sixth form, we're going to be doing a Santa's Grotto, where they can just come in, write letters to Santa through the medium of Welsh. And we've got everyone in green ties here are going to be dressed up as elves, and I'm going to be dressed as Santa. So we'll be able to give them the Santa experience through the medium of Welsh. Next, I think I'm going to give you over to Hetty, who's in charge of Curtesi.
Thank you, Isaac. My name is Hetty, and I lead the Curtesi Council, which means respect, and we basically just work on making sure that everyone in school is treated equally and that they don't feel scared, because school is a very scary place to be. Just inherently growing up is very scary, and we don't want anyone to feel afraid because of the way they identify, whether that be their gender, their sexuality, their race, disabilities, or so on and so forth. We really want the school to be inclusive, and we work with the LGBT union, which I also run, to make sure that, in particular, queer voices are heard. We really hope that school can become safe, and that everyone can feel like they are respected and like they are heard. And we don't want anyone to feel discriminated against or like they're being ignored because of how they identify. We also have been working, since COVID, we've been working with mental health agencies within Torfaen to make sure that vulnerable students are getting the support that they deserve. That includes Cymraeg Young People. We've been working with Engage to help our students with drug addiction or just raising awareness about drugs. And yes, as a council, as a subcommittee, we've been working, and we hope that the school will become a very respectful place where everyone can feel safe, as safe as we can manage. I think Ellis and Finn will be talking next about Cyflawni.
Bore da, my name is Ellis, and this is Finn, and we are leaders of the Achievement Council. Our work involves ensuring that all students have equal chances in education, and we are ensuring that student voice is reflected in our education. We have one member of the team part of WJEC's Qualification Council, and this ensures that our voice is reflected in education and ensure that we have representation in regards to our future education.
In our council, we have been focusing on the environment of a classroom and where children thrive in learning, and how we can change of our school to improve the potential that we can achieve as a school.
We are in the process of creating a questionnaire in order to highlight the ways the students best learn and how we can improve that academic environment to ensure that there is no excuse for students not to perform at their best academically. I would like to now pass on to Fionn, that has done very good work in regards to the canteen and food in the school.
Part and parcel of achievement is well-being of students. Harvey and I have collaborated with Joan Jones, one of our chefs, to develop and enrich the choices in the cafeteria. One of the main things that I focused on was making sure that there was vegan and vegetarian options available for all students. I did this by creating posters, making sure that there was awareness about it, and we had people coming in to talk to us and give us vegan test foods to see if we enjoyed them or not.
Also, we believe as a school, reducing the amount of plastic we use is important. So during COVID, we relied a lot on plastic and cardboard use, to stop people eating in, to stop the spread. So we had to rely on plastic. But now COVID has gone, we have brought back sitting in the cafeteria, also plates to stop plastic.
The final thing that we've been focusing on was creating a snack bar below the cafeteria where students can go to cut queues and to make sure that everybody is getting their food at lunchtime. Thank you.
So another thing the school's been engaging on is the EAS, which is the Pupil Engagement Forum. It's generally focused on getting sort of a voice from all the students and bringing that onto an inter-school level, which I think is really important for students in the school, so they can feel that their voice is being heard and that they can then share that to this EAS, the Pupil Engagement Forum, which is an inter-school thing, and then they can really just get it onto a level where every school's voice is being heard. I think Charlotte's talking next about Cymru Sarah Cymru, so thank you.
Hello, my name is Charlotte. Yes, I've been working recently with Qualifications Wales as part of the learner group. We've been discussing the changes made to the curriculum at the moment and how things are changing in the curriculum with WJC. There are two of us, I believe in year 10, working with the learner group. We get pupil voices in, we speak to those within our years. Our own worries and thoughts about the curriculum can be heard by the examiners working at WJC and with Qualifications Wales through me and the other year 10 people on the learner group where we discuss the curriculum. Thank you.
So next we're going to talk a little bit about vaping, so I'll wait for Jacob to get it first. So basically it's a prevalent issue in schools at the moment. We tried to tackle this issue by implementing sensors in all the toilets, and it has really depleted the amount of people that are vaping in school. And now Jacob's going to tell you a little bit of the work we've done.
So similarly to some of the other schools I know in Torfaen have been doing, within our lessons we've been trying to incorporate teachers telling students about the risks of vaping. But as well as that, we think it's best to have sort of external people coming into the school just to really share their points of view and their expertise with the pupils in order to try and reduce the amount of children that are vaping. So obviously, as well as the vape alarms that we've installed, like Tia said, we have been in contact with our PC liaison officer and Engage Gwent, as well as the health board, to arrange an assembly that's going to happen just after the Christmas period. And we're going to really try and tackle the amount of vaping that's happening in schools. But also, we want to make sure that our pupils really understand how dangerous vaping can be, which can be quite challenging as we don't know every risk that can come with vaping. But we're hoping this assembly will really help sort of encourage students to try and stop vaping.
Can I invite Maddie up now to speak about Cyfranoghi?
Bore da, enw fi yw Maddie. So I am Maddie and I am the part of the subcommittee of Cyfranoghi, which is participation. We have organised a calendar of different charities that we have supported over the years, such as Macmillan, which we did a couple of weeks ago. We managed to have raised over £200 for the charity. Last week we had done Children in Need. We were very fortunate to have raised over £600, but we're doing the charities not only to bring awareness to our school and the local community, because we are also aware of the cost of living crisis. Not everybody is able to give to these charities. And so, therefore, bringing awareness about things, I have started a club for Miss T, which brings awareness about period poverty. So I speak to a lot of pupils who come in and need support about period poverty, and they also get essentials from me. So I think this is really important within our community and with our school to all be together. Thank you.
I'd now like to introduce Ian, who is part of the Sustainability Subcommittee with myself. And so our focus throughout the year so far has been how we can be more environmentally friendly. And our biggest challenge that has been brought up that is from students through our subcommittees, which extends throughout the whole school up until years as young as year 7, that the lack of water fountains throughout the school. And so before COVID, we did have water fountains available and water sources, but we had issues with leaks because they weren't attached to the actual water mains, they were attached to the walls, so we had leaks, which causes mould, dampness throughout the school, and basically was a no-go and had to go. And it has been brought up now that we need new water fountains available and resources available to students as it's key, and it's not always convenient to have to go to the canteen the other side of the school when you know you have a lesson coming up in a couple of minutes.
Also, another problem that's been brought up is bins around the entire school, and it's also been raised that in April next year there will be a real problem with having to separate your recycling and having separate bins for every different material. So we've looked at the cost of these bins, and to buy a bin separately in order to accomplish doing these recyclings correctly is around £600. And we were looking to kind of go below that. So as a DT department, which Tom works within, we're looking to make our own bins and make our own structure with it so that we are lowering the cost of what we have to pay for.
So as a council, we're very solution focused, and we're very realistic, whether it's how the cost of items and the resources that we need to use them, because as we know, teachers are busy throughout the day, teachers have other lives other than teaching, so we can't always, we do have to take it sometimes and do stuff ourselves. So in the DT department, we are trying to, at the moment, build a plan to make frames and different bins to separate waste, whether it's general waste, cardboard, plastics. It's just to allow us to recycle, but in a more convenient way and a cost-effective way, using resources that are already on the school grounds. So that way we're not using, we're not spending too much money, we're not spending time looking for resources. We're basically trying to be sustainable and use already what we have access to. So an event that we have coming up soon, we have been in contact with a gentleman called Lewis in our school council, and we are working now to get a gig in the coming weeks with it's a Welsh-focused band to try and bring in the cultured side of, to try and bring in more culture, Welsh culture, rather than to try and separate that link between the Welsh language and just education. So we're trying to separate it, to bring in extracurricular activities like the band, like possibly even having a skateboard instructor. We're trying to bring in different activities into the school to try and pull that Welsh language away from just the learning, the exams, the stress. We're really trying to separate it to bring up Welsh people rather than Welsh learners, if that makes sense.
I think that's everything for today. I'd like to say another big thank you for having us here and the Dolly Llawen.
Thank you. Just wait for everybody to come back into the chamber. Can I thank you on behalf of the Council for such an excellent presentation? I know the leader wants to say something, but if you look at some empty seats around here, it's probably because they're online, but they could be your seats in a few years' time. So thank you ever so much. What an insight into us for government through So much appreciated. Leader.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you for that presentation. Recently in the Council we've had pupils from Nantarnam Primary School and also pupils from Panteg Scouts in as well. And between the three groups it's really been inspiring to see how well our young people can speak and how clued up you are to so many of the issues. Really interested to hear about your work on Welsh culture, on respect and inclusivity, on charity and community, on achievement and aspiration, and on sustainability. Really inspiring to hear you talk about that. And I'd like to encourage you to keep in touch with us as a council as and when we can do anything to help, especially with the bins and the separate recycling. I'm sure we could give a contribution towards the materials that you're using for that, because that sounds like an excellent way of both, developing your DT skills and also helping us with the recycling mission that we got as a council. So if your teachers want to get in touch, and I'll make sure that we can help you with some of the material costs for that project, just as a thank you for coming today. It's really inspiring to hear our young people talk and to be so engaged with many of the issues that we talk about in this council chamber as well, things like mental health, things like charity and community, respect and inclusivity, sustainability, the same challenges that we face as a council. So thank you today. You've really brightened up the morning of the council.
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to offer a personal invitation to use this chamber at any time for your school council's meeting. So please feel welcome to come down, make an appointment, and come into the chamber to use this room as a council chamber for your council meeting any time at all. And that offer goes to all schools within the borough. So thank you ever so much. We'll carry on with the agenda now. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements?
Nothing from me, Madam Presiding Member, beyond thanking the students for joining us this morning and brightening up the day. And I've really enjoyed the presentation, and actually you've set a standard for us all and in your leadership. I think that's absolutely fantastic, and hopefully one day you'll join us as employees of the council, and I'm sure one of you will one day become the chief exec of the council too. So thank you very much.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 9, Torfaen Education Service, post-inspection update on page 23 of the agenda. Jason O'Brien, the Strategic Director, Children and Family Services, could you deliver the report for us, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. I feel as if I'm on a back foot already, having to follow Slocum Gregwinth's presentation then, but I'll give it my best. So the report which has been submitted to you today aims to provide Council with an update of work taking place to continually improve and develop education provision within Torfaen. The report is part of an ongoing schedule of updates to Council which follows the outcome and recommendations of the Edston inspection of March 2022. Council was last provided with an update report in April 2023, at which time the key messages were that following the Edston inspection in March 2022, a post-inspection action plan was produced and had been agreed with Edston. Governance of the work of the education services had been strengthened through the establishment of a monthly accelerated improvement group and termly strategic improvement boards, in addition to regular scrutiny sessions. Significant leadership, governance and operational changes had been made to the service since the last co-inspection. Ysgol Gymraeg Gwynthrew was removed from special measures in March 23, and all published Edston inspections that have taken place in schools since the local authority inspection have resulted in positive outcomes with no follow-up required by Edston. So that was included in the report that was presented to Council in April 23. These key messages remain, and since we reported in April, a further 2 schools have been inspected, with none of those schools requiring any further follow-up. That means that a total of 9 schools have been positively inspected since the Edston inspection of the local authority. 1 school remains in a special measure and is receiving enhanced support from the local authority, from the EAS, and has a heightened level of scrutiny therein as well. Encouragingly, the local authorities and the EAS's assessments of those schools prior to inspection mirrored the findings of the outcome of each inspection visit, and it's clear that frequent and robust analysis of a range of whole school data is giving the local authority an improved picture of our schools, which enables us to provide high support, high challenge, and in turn have high expectations. Edston completed a monitoring visit with the local authority in June 2023, which focused on recommendation 4, which was improving strategic leadership, of learning and ALN. Following the monitoring visit, Estyn wrote to the local authority and outlined the following. The renewed structure within the local authority was leading to an increasing culture of openness and transparency between the local authority and its schools. Senior leaders from the local authority and EAS were beginning to work more proactively to provide targeted support to identified schools. Teams within the local authority were working more collaboratively to support schools. The new ALN strategy, which was at that time being finalised in readiness for use in September, and the local authority had taken suitable action to improve services for pupils with ALN and address shortcomings identified at the time of the inspection. The local authority developed oversight of modified days for individual pupils and schools to ensure justification of modified days and that requisite support was being provided. And the local authority has agreed clear entry and exit criteria for specialist provision. Roles and responsibilities of leaders and officers had been redefined across the Directorate, and as a result, there is a clearer understanding among staff for systems and processes to understand how each service works with schools. Understandably, with it being a first monitoring visit, it concluded that whilst the local authority was taking a sensible and measured approach to improving leadership capacity across the Directorate, it was too early at that point to fully measure the impact of many of the recent changes. The report before you references attendance and exclusions, and just to touch upon that, overall, within the last year, there's been some positive progress in terms of improved attendance, with primary school attendance increasing within the year from 90.81% to 91.7%, and secondary school attendance increasing from 83.7% to 86.4%. Whilst attendance remains a national issue, the local authority appreciate that it needs to do more to improve this considerably, and has a number of campaigns and strategies in place with an aspiration of achieving at least 95% attendance. The report highlights some of the activity and provision that is put in place in order to increase attendance and reduce exclusion rates. The schedule of extensive broad scrutiny activity is attached within the report, and in addition to the political oversight that takes place, there is significant scrutiny and developed accountability within the service area via the development of the Education Improvement Plan that has been aligned to the county plan. There is also a quarterly reporting cycle of performance data that is presented to corporate leadership to ensure joint understanding, accountability and joint work across the respective directorate areas. So the next steps for us, we will continue to implement and monitor the impact of the Education Service Improvement Plan. We will obviously continue to strive to improve attendance and reduce exclusions within the local authority area. And we will report to the Council following the Estyn monitoring visits, the next one being scheduled for January 2024. Whilst I acknowledge that we continue to have a great deal of work ahead of us in order to evidence that we are no longer a cause for concern, I'm exceptionally proud of the way within which the service area, particularly under the leadership of the Director of Education, Andrew Powles, has responded to the challenge so far. Of course, whilst we have a focus on no longer being a cause for concern, our key focus will always be one of continued improvement, where, in accordance with Wellbeing Objective 1 of the County Plan, we will raise educational attainment, helping young people and adults to gain the qualifications and skills needed to lead positive lives. I'm joined today as well by the Director of Education, Andrew Powles, and the Head of Learning and Achievement, Andy Rothwell, if members have any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Richard Clark, the Executive Member for Education, I believe.
Thanks, Presiding Member. When I first spoke to you post-inspection, I promised to keep members informed since that inspection, and this is the latest of several reports, member seminars and half-termly newsletters. Apologies for the voice, I don't always sound like this, as you well know. From my taking over, a new team is in place, and a new culture has also developed within the department. I think the report and our strives since the Estyn report has proven that the relationships are now in place We do challenge the AS. They do work with us, and we offer a better service. Within the departments, there is a more collegiate approach where people are interested in other sections of the department, and they look at each other's team plans and learn and gain from that. Everybody is pulling in the right direction, and I think as a result, when we have the Estin monitoring visits, that will be even more success to us. Myself, I've visited all of our schools. I've spoken to head teachers and other staff, and, you know, they shoot from the hip. They tell you exactly as it is. And the relationships that are with our schools now, to me, would appear the strongest they've ever been. They're never going to be perfect. I know schools will always want more and will want more from schools. But there's good relationships. They know where to go to. They know who to speak to. The quality of information that we now collect and use, which is more important. It's wonderful having all the information you want. If you don't use it, it's not worth a halfpenny of anything. So the fact that we use that now, assist our schools, get in early to our schools and not take it as a fait accompli when Esther knock on the door, that we get the interventions in early, and that we know where there are issues and we can have that honest conversation with Eston about those. Our relationship with Eston in itself since the inspection, they're not the pariah that are the inspectors, the bogeymen, women, whatever. They are part of the solution, and we work well with them, have a good relationship with us, and they've been very assistive in the process. I would also like to congratulate all the schools listed in the report for their estimate results. I don't know, Jason, did you mention Panteg? Oh, you're over there. You were up there, weren't you? No, you're never up there. Did you mention Panteg?
It is referenced within the report, Panteg.
It is referenced, that's fine. It was in my mind that
final report was published last week, Andrew.
But them as well. So it's good to see that positive. But I've always said that this is a journey. It's not just a tick-boxing exercise. Sadly, in the past, I think, as an authority, we used it as a tick box to get out of Estin measures, and as soon as we just carried on regardless. The AIG will remain in place to drive improvement in the school, and when we come out to special measures, it will stay in place to continue that improvement, not just to coach along, to improve and go up the scale in Wales to be a lead authority in education. A little way off, but I think with the current team, we can achieve it, because boy, do they work hard.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Are there any questions from members? I'll take Councillor David Williams and Councillor Alfie Best.
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Member. Yeah, very helpful and positive report. Just a couple of observations, if I may. There was reference, I think, on page 26 to the development of the managed moves policy and the fair access panel. I would find it helpful to know a little more of that. I see it's on the education scrutiny agenda for February. I would just suggest that it might be helpful for all members to have some information in relation to that, and not just that scrutiny committee at that time. Second point is also to note the value of the rejuvenated Torvine Association of School Governors, the task group, and the support that's been given to that, because I think that's very helpful for governors. And that points me to the observation down on page 40 for Objective 1, approving quality of leadership and governance in Torvine schools. It was really just to ask the question as to whether the Education Department feel that they are getting sufficient numbers of people coming forward to be governors, or whether we still have shortfalls in some areas.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Do you want to answer those?
Good morning, everyone. I'm Andrew Powells, and Director of Education. So in terms of recruitment of governors, we do have some vacancies at the moment. They're not significant, but they do exist. In terms of LA governors, we do have a small number, and we always welcome applications, either suggestions from schools or obviously members to put forward. Councillor Clark, Andy and I meet each half term to appoint LA governors. We do always have candidates coming forward, but like I say, there do exist a few. Welsh medium schools often struggle to recruit LA governors. I think there's sometimes a fear that all the meetings will be operating purely in Welsh and therefore governors can't contribute. That's absolutely not the case. We always make sure that translation is in place for all those who don't speak Welsh and are not bilingual. Another issue we're working with the diocese is around the recruitment of foundation governors, particularly for Catholic schools. We do have a small number of those vacancies available, and again, we are working closely with the diocese to fill those. They are appointed by the diocese, but again, we could put forward nominations to them.
Thank you. Councillor Best.
Thank you. I know we're going to be looking at this in scrutiny in the new year, so I'll keep it short. But on the increase in attendance, how is that compared to other places locally, other authorities, and Greater Welsh trend? And what's been the success or progress of the Not In, Miss Out campaign so far?
Thanks, Councillor. Good morning, everybody. Andy Ruffle, I'm the Head of Learning and Achievement. In terms of the Not In, Miss Out campaign, Councillor, I'll come to that bit first. I think taking a view from schools has been quite interesting on this in terms of just raising the profile of and the importance of being in school and the things not to miss out on. It does exactly what it says on the tin. I think that's been really positive. So rather than focusing on the negatives, focusing on the positives of being in school, attending school. Feedback we've had from schools is it's having an impact. You walk around school sites, I'm sure many of you attend school sites, you'll see the banners up on school grounds, and then the messages that come through it, maybe school-based assemblies, sharing the positives in terms of what's going on, comparing classes, little inter-school competitions, that sort of things. The other, I think, really positive thing that we've seen schools adopting, and Cumbrae High have done this actually really well with social media. If you look at their extracurricular provision that they offer around sport, drama, music, they're celebrating that as part of the Not In, Miss Out campaign, so we're really pleased about that. In terms of attendance data, how are we comparing? So looking at the unverified Welsh Government data that gets released now on a fortnightly basis, we're at 91%. The Welsh average is at 91.3%. We've narrowed the gap considerably. This time last year, we were about 1.5% away from the Welsh average, so we've narrowed it. But we recognise, and I think the report highlights this, we're really pleased with the progress, but there is still a way to go to get back to where we were. We just want to take the opportunity to say thank you to schools in particular for all of the hard work that they're doing, working with our Education Welfare Service, but the hard work and hours that they're putting into reaching out, redeveloping relationships with families, offering incredible amounts of support as well for that.
Thank you. I don't think we picked up on Councillor Williams' managed moves explanation. Can we?
So the Fair Access Panel Managed Moves, that's been in operation this term, so it's new. This is all secondary schools meet on a weekly basis, and this is for learners who are struggling to stay in a particular school and are at risk of permanent exclusion. So we want to avoid that because we recognise the damage it does to the individual learner, plus it's not helpful to anyone. So the purpose of the managed move is sometimes to facilitate a movement to a different school for a learner, but it's also about for the schools to work together to think, actually, how can they manage the learner's behaviour better, what support is in place, and it's about that cross-learning between schools. So all the secondary schools are there alongside with local authority staff. I think this is a really effective professional learning forum for all staff. The expertise of managing learners sits within schools. This is what they do on a daily basis. We want to encourage that sharing of good practice between them. And the local authority has sometimes that outside view that can be the critical friend or bring in particular expertise from, for example, the Educational Psychology Service. So that's why this has been set up. It is new, it's embedding, it is part of the scrutiny agenda for the spring. I can happily share the Managed Move Fair Access policy that's been devised with all members following the meeting.
Councillor Giles Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to say it's quite a positive report, which is really nice to see. We've been through some dark times with education in the past, and I think since Richard's taken over as Executive Member for Education, we've seen some real positive changes within the team, and I'd just like to thank Richard and the team for all the progress made so far. It's really encouraging, and it's a real good positive going forward. So just want to say credit where it's due. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
Yeah, I'd like to start by thanking Richard and team of officers who have spoken today for their hard work. I don't want to sound like an auditor, but my level of assurance in this area at the moment is high, which means, you know, I'm confident in the work that's being done, that we're working in the right direction. There's that balance between ambition and realism, which I think is important in education. You can have all the strategies and vision in the world, but if you don't sort of act day in, day out on getting that down onto the tracks, then it's just that. And there's a real open and honest approach to this. When I ask questions, I'm getting honest answers, but also answers that point towards how we can continue to push to make things better. I think members also deserve thanks across the Chamber for the way they've invested in education in the last few years. In terms of our revenue budget, we've moved from being middle of the pack, maybe even lower end of the pack in terms of per pupil provision in education, towards the right at the top of the pack. I've not got the exact figures on me, but I think we're amongst the top 2 or 3 councils in terms of how we fund education per learner now, and that's down to the difficult choices that you've all made as members, because no choice to prioritise is without cost. You know the huge number of things that burden our budgets, but I think it's quite right that education and the future of our young people is right at the top of our list, and I hope it stays there. So thank you to members. The question I was going to ask was about behaviour and mental health. We've heard it touched on earlier, and I think post-pandemic and all the things that have happened in the last few years, and the huge amount of pressure there is on young people now, especially with social media, which I was very glad didn't exist when I was young for many reasons. How are we looking to make sure there's the provision there for young people going through difficult times, and for helping them with, you know, both in a preventative sense and with mental health and well-being?
Thank you, Leeds. I think, yeah, this is key, and this attendance performance is an indicator of the struggles that some learners are having at the moment. So there's been a lot of new practice put in place over the last year. Some of it is linked to the Healthy Schools scheme, which has operated for a while. So that's working with schools, in which some of the pupils from Gwenflew referred to today, in terms of relationships and sexuality education work, about substance misuse understanding, about how that's embedded into the new curriculum through the health and well-being aspect. So we're working closely with schools to make sure that the curriculum is appropriate and that it's relevant to the learners, and actually learners drive a lot of the curriculum. The Educational Psychology Service is working closely with secondaries at the moment to plan a behaviour conference and additional support that will take place in the spring. Again, we want to co-construct this programme with the schools. And as part of that, we're rolling out the ELSA programme. So that's the Emotional Literacy Support Assistant programme. That will roll out to schools from April. And with it, that's training staff within schools to in effect, carry out some mental health first aid work and be able to not only signpost the services, but actually have more structured conversations, supportive conversations with learners. Alongside that, there's also the ALN, the Additional Learning Needs work that's going on, making sure that we have appropriate curriculum that's differentiated for the needs of learners, whether it be cognitive or behavioural challenges that the learners are experiencing. This is the part of the Welsh Government transformation work around ALN. So there's a significant amount of work going on where wellbeing is the core of it, whether it's about support services wrapped around pupil voice, the additional work through the ELSA programme, for example, and just and the Healthy Schools schemes.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak? That leaves my prerogative as chair. I've got the pleasure of being the presiding officer of council, but I'm also the chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee for Education. I'd just like to echo the views of the community, the Scrutiny Committee, sorry. They give these officers going over every meeting. They have about 25, 30 questions. But I'd like to inform the schools that or anyone in the community, if they have any questions for the Scrutiny Committee, particularly Education Committee, please forward them through to our officers, because they will come through to the Scrutiny Committee. I also invite any members that wishes to sit in the balcony and listen to any scrutiny, as we're online as well. But we have lessons to learn. Our scrutiny committees have been going out to schools the last few months, and we've learned quite a substantial amount of our schools, and that's part of it, listening to your story. This morning, listening to Ysgol Gwyntlew's story is what we need to hear. It's about what work is going on, the good, excellent work that's going on in our schools, and our staff are to be commended as our school teachers too. So thank you very much, everybody, and I welcome this report. I know, we do put you through scrutiny, but that's what we're here for, so thank you very much. Okay, there's nobody else wishing to speak. The recommendations for this report start on page 30. Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations, and it is to accept the report as an update to full council? Thank you, Ysgol Gwynthlew. It's not Guffin anymore, is it? I'll have to learn the middle name. Sorry. I'll take that vote again then. So all those in favour of noting this update? Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item 10, the County Plan Delivery Plan 2023-24, half-yearly update. That starts on page 77, apologies. Stephen Vickers, Chief Executive, could you deliver this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. So members will be aware of our commitment to produce an annual delivery plan throughout the life cycle of our county plan, and of our commitment to update council twice per year on our activities and progress towards delivery milestones. As we've now reached the midpoint of the 23-24 reporting year, we are in a position to provide council with the next update, which is set out in the report before you. We aim to ensure that activity is reported in an open and transparent way, so we can continue to build trust and confidence, ensure that we are accountable, and ensure that our members and our public are well informed. An overview of our delivery performance is therefore set out under paragraphs 4.3 and 4.4 of the report, with more detail provided in Appendix 1. Over the past 6 months, council staff, working alongside partners and importantly our communities, have continued to focus on achieving the outcomes set out within the delivery plan and our overarching county plan. I hope that members agree that the report demonstrates the many positive strides that we're taking and making to deliver our priorities, and the hard work that's going on to make that possible. I'm aware that Councillor Jones is planning to provide further comments, so I won't go into greater detail here other than to say that I hope that members find the report informative and a positive reflection of the Council's activity. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you. Any questions? Or Councillor Jones, do you want to come in first?
Yes, thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'd like to thank Stephen for his introductory remarks about this delivery report. Members will recall that I spoke for a long time at our council meeting on 8th of July about the first year of how we performed against our county plan. I suspect you will all be pleased that I intend to be briefer with my remarks today as we examine this mid-year report for 2023-24. Before I go into detail, I must record my thanks to Kath Joseph, Leanne Skellett and Tom Roberts for developing the report, as it has been a lot of work. I think, members, that sometimes we take for granted all these reports that officers provide. Huge amount of work goes into them, and I don't think we should ever forget that. I agree with everything that Stephen has said, and I would emphasise that the county plan is aspirational, and we are committed to delivering it. As members will note, the report provides an overall positive picture. Approximately 72% of the plan is either on target green or complete blue. 16% we're experiencing some difficulties amber. 5% have more significant concerns red. 7% are not yet due to start grey. and one activity we have unfortunately had to abort, which is black. I am incredibly pleased that we are already hitting 72% of our targets. When I last reported to you in July about our first year's performance against the county plan, I went into detail about many of our achievements. I'm not going to do that today, as the report, which you have all had the opportunity to read, covers off the tremendous amount of work our officers do to deliver so many challenging targets. They continue to do this despite the inevitable impact of austerity increasing demands on them and restricting the resources they have to deliver progress. Instead, I will just say I am immensely proud of the myriad of services our officers deliver to support the citizens of Torfaen. Instead, today, I want to give you some reassurances about targets we currently judge to be amber or red. The message here is that we are very carefully and regularly monitoring our performance. Red or amber does not mean we're going to not deliver. We are going to deliver, but for assorted reasons, it might be not as quick as we originally thought. With any stretching targets, if you monitor properly, you sometimes must adjust to ensure the outcomes you desire. With one exception, I am confident that we will deliver all our targets. The one exception, which we have classed as aborted black, is around the active travel project on Cwmbran Drive. This was out of our hands as we had been unable to get the necessary funding. However, I am pleased to report that funding has been secured to take forward a different programme of work in the next financial year. I hope members will agree that using the traffic light monitoring system makes it easier to see the specifics of how the Council is performing against each of the 9 wellbeing objectives. In conclusion, I am going to repeat some of the observations I made back in July. Our ambition is to be an outstanding council. This report demonstrates, in my view, that we are well on the road to achieving that. I hope members will agree and support the recommendation in paragraph 8.1 of the report and note, and we're asking you to note, the progress we have made at mid-year in 2023-24. As always, Cabinet colleagues and the senior leadership team are here to answer any questions that members wish to raise. Madam Presiding Member, I will now hand back to you for members' questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We have Councillor Stuart Ashley online. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. All I was going to do is support what Peter had to say. The point of having the county plan, and we've come to scrutiny, is this is clear and precise. I'm not going to comment on any one item of it. It's just, it's probably the best I've seen in regards. It does flag up each item, and as such, we can be clear that the items that we are concerned about are there. So I'm not going to comment on them, except that we know where they are. We can keep an item on, and certainly this came to audit as well. So, you know, we know what we're able to monitor that, and audit was able to note that as well. So thank you very much for giving us a plan that's live and able to follow through. And Peter's observations, I totally agree with. The chair, as current chair of the scrutiny committee, and obviously when we get that for scrutiny, we can reflect on it. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Councillor Lucy Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Yes, so first of all, just to echo the previous comments, this is a more generic question. I'd be interested to hear. The report is really good at sort of showing where we're up to with the different service areas. But I wonder if we could hear a comment on how the change round of the directorates is working to make sure that all the different service areas are becoming more integrated, because I know that's a really key part of this county plan, the sort of collaboration of different areas. So just to sort of, this is a more qualitative question rather than quantitative. So I'd be interested to hear about how that collaboration is working across service areas. Thank you.
Okay, Chief Exec, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think if we just reflect on the previous report around education, it gives us some context to bring to light. It very much felt pre-restructure and pre-county plan, and you'll look at these wellbeing objectives and see that they're not focused around a single directorate. There are, of course, 9 wellbeing objectives, 4 focus around people, 4 focus around place, 1 is around the way that we deliver and improve delivery around our council services. I think that what you'll recognize, it felt very much before we separated or reformed the directorates, that education within the classroom was isolated really from that also needs to support education to be successful. So the obvious example here is around schools maintenance programs, schools build programs, schools improvement programs more broadly. So I think that as a result of the focus more broadly, and indeed actually just to reflect briefly upon opportunities for our schools to be more interactive within communities. So these are very much clear improvements that we've been able to make as a result of the restructuring that we've done, but also as a result of us focusing around 9 wellbeing objectives that we as a council, as a corporate council, tend to focus on more collectively than we would have done in isolation from one another. And that's definitely the biggest difference that we've been able to be able to see. So there's real momentum that's been gained as a result of us working collectively on a single objective, as opposed to us viewing any objective as one responsibility of one part of the council to deliver.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Williams?
Thank you very much, Madam Presiding Member. I think it's very helpful, and I think what's also very positive is how candid it is to actually sort of say where there have been failures or perhaps delays in some things going forward. So I guess it's really, for me, what stood out was that perhaps we do need to give full attention to wellbeing Objective 3, because there were a significant number of things that perhaps hadn't quite started, hadn't quite progressed as thought. I refer to page 122 and 123 and 124 of the report. So it's not a criticism, it's simply an observation that perhaps that's where we need to direct some of those resources, and perhaps some concern that maybe a significant absence made for some delays. And I think that's a learning point, hopefully, for us going forward. I'm not suggesting that the officers may comment on that, but they may wish to. And finally, on page 124, I think the engagement and connectivity with community councils, and I should declare an interest as being a member of Crossy Caelog and Llanrabban Community Council. I think that could be accelerated and developed after the initial work that's been done to establish connections and take forward engagement on key policy areas in recent times. Thank you.
Dave, thank you. Councillor Collett-Thomas next.
Thank you. My question...
sorry, Colette.
Sorry,
you want to come in and respond there? Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on the points that were raised there, because I think they're really important ones in relation to some of those activities. Yes, it is something, just to give reassurance to members, that we are reflecting on in terms of that capacity across the directorates when there are absences of a prolonged period of time. And I think part of the candid way in which this has been reported shows that whilst the timescales have slipped on an individual action, we've actually picked up parts of that action under another programme that's reporting green. So whilst that particular action may be coming back to say it's red, some components of it we've actually managed to reallocate to something else. So I'm confident that, as I know was said at the start, the outcomes that we're trying to achieve with that objective will be achieved, just not perhaps in the way that we did originally envisaged.
Thank you. Councillor Collett-Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to page 108. It's just really about the caseloads of social workers, particularly in the south of the borough. I just wonder whether there's been any progress on that. I did see it is in amber.
Thank you, Councillor. We monitor that on a monthly basis, or on a weekly basis, actually, the caseload of our social work staff. It does fluctuate, and if we were having this conversation 12 months ago, the key issue would have been in the north of the borough rather than the south. We are looking, in the future, looking to reevaluate how the service currently operates in line with the locality split to see if we can change that disproportion or that fluctuation, so have more responsive services rather than a service that operates completely within a borough area. So it is being monitored. There are elements within some of that data where there are some cases that will be closed as well as we go forward, so some of that data will be cleansed each week as well, but it is something that the head service monitors and allocates resource around those cases. What also we need to take into context, of course, is that some of those cases, in some ways, it's like comparing apples and pears. So a caseload of 20, for example, could be generating the same level of work as a caseload of 4, depending upon the complexity and the nature of that workload as well. So sometimes it's a bit, you know, the crude numbers don't always paint the real picture, the reality of the input that's there, but it is being continually monitored.
Thank you, Jason. Councillor Stewart-Ashley, do you wish to have another question?
I was going to ask the Chief Executive. I think it's a really, really useful tool, this, and just reflecting on how he uses it and his team uses it, because it's a good narrative and it's a good mapping exercise. Obviously, they've got themselves a tool. I wonder how they're going to be using it going forward. It just formed in my mind, actually, because it's quite some tool.
Thank you, Councillor Ashington. Stephen.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Ashley. I mean, we have a variety of ways of monitoring and measuring the activity that goes on across the council. Not least of all, we've introduced a 12-week reporting cycle through the leadership team. So we get to see all of the main activity that's going on, and particularly as a result of each directorate's dashboard, we get to focus on those areas that are of significant priority, alongside the leadership team that monitors directorate activity. And we also, of course, have introduced the corporate programme board, which focuses very much upon the higher level projects that we've got going across the council, as well as some of the work that will be coming online into the future. So we've got in place quite a robust governance structure, including, of course, our corporate risk register, directorate risk registers, and local team directorate risk registers, to ensure that we are focusing on the right things at the right time and that we're as responsive as we possibly can be. And I think the success of all of that combined activity, that governance that we've got in place, is the reason that we're seeing so much success, really, in respect of hitting our targets or being very, very close to them. Many of the areas that are slipping, and certainly the reds, tend to be things that are sometimes outside of our control. But we're aware of them, we focus in on them, we redistribute resources according to what we think is the priority. And as I say, I think overall that governance structure is working well. But we'll use this tool very much in the way that we would ask you to use it and ask scrutiny to use it. We definitely keep an eye on things, using as many tools as we possibly can, and this is just one of many.
But my second part of that question was, and you've sort of answered it, how do you think members should read it?
Well, I would encourage you to, the idea, as I said within my introduction, is that we're trying to be as open, as transparent, as accountable to you as members and members of the public as is possible. And I think in the way that you're using it here today, sometimes to ask us questions about assurance around how we deliver more broadly, strategically across the council, more corporately, and sometimes line by line to ask us to explain why individual lines of activity are falling behind or slipping and what we're doing about it. I would definitely encourage you to use it in exactly that way.
Thank you.
Councillor Peter Jones.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I just wanted to touch on a point that Councillor Williams raised about community council engagement. I chair the Partnership Council with all the community councils, and we're constantly trying to encourage the community council to bring issues to the table to discuss with us. So for Crossculligan and Llanrafan, please, if there are issues that you want to raise with Torfaen, that's one forum that you can use.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. I don't see any other questioners wishing to speak. So I'll take the recommendations, which are on page 81 of the report. Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations? Thank you. Are there any members against the recommendations? Are there any abstentions? That report is carried and noted. Thank you very much. Takes us to agenda item 11, changes to the Constitution, National Joint Committee for the National Adoption Service and Foster Wales, and nomination to serve on the committee. On page 177, Delyth Harris, Monitoring Officer and Assistant Chief Legal Officer. Could you deliver this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. It's a very brief report. In January this year, Council approved the governance arrangements for the National Adoption Service in Foster Wales through the establishment of the Joint Committee. There's now a requirement to appoint a member to serve on that committee and for the Constitution to be amended or updated, actually, to include the reference to the Joint Committee. So the recommendation is contained in paragraph 7 of the report, and that is the Council agrees that the Monitoring Officer, in consultation with Members' Constitution Working Party, be granted delegated authority to make the amendments to the Constitution to reflect the establishment of the National Joint Committee for the National Adoption Service in Foster Wales, and also that Councillor Richard Clark be nominated to serve on the National Joint Committee for the National Adoption Service in Foster Wales until Cabinet next agrees the appointments to the joint committees. Thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you, Delyth. Anybody wishing to comment? Now, the recommendations are on page 178 of the report. Can I ask members whether they agree with those recommendations? Thank you. Are there any members against those recommendations? Any abstentions? Thank you. That recommendation is carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 12, nomination to outside bodies. In-year update on page 179 of your agenda. Jason Lewis, Director Corporate Services and Head of Democratic Services. Could you deliver this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. The purpose of this report is to inform Council of changes agreed by the Chief Executive and the Leader under delegated powers to the member nominated to serve on the Torfaen Leisure Trust Board of Trustees at the AGM in May this year. As you'll be aware, variations to nominations can be made during the year, and such decisions in year are made by the Chief Executive and the Leader in line with the Council's Constitution. Council is advised then subsequently during the year of such decisions as they arise. Councillor Anthony had to step down from the Leisure Trust's Board of Trustees, and the nominated replacement is Councillor Rose Seaborn. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I ask if any members have any comments? There's Giles Davis.
Thank you. Yeah, just wondered who was actually on the board these days, because up until recently there was no board in place for Torfaen Leisure Trust. Is there now a board of trustees now actually in place? Just for clarification, thanks.
Thank you, Dave.
Yes, Councillor Davis said the board has now been interviewed, new board members. There were quite a few strong candidates who came forward, and there is now a board ready to be in place for the trust.
Okay, thank you. The recommendations are on page 179 of the report. Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations, please? Are there any members against the recommendations? Are there any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much. Agenda item 13, motions on notice. There are no motions on notice, so we'll move on to agenda item 14, which is members' question time. And there are 2 questions from members today. The first question on the sheet is Councillor Janet Jones.
Thank you, Chair. We seem to be an education focus this morning with this question. Over the past few months, I've become aware or made aware of the large numbers of Torfaen students who are opting to take their post-16 higher education studies at Hereford College. Is this because we've cut our sixth forms at our secondary schools, or because the lack of suitable courses at Coleg Gwent, or, unfortunately, is this because of poor tutoring? It really looks that we are failing some of our students.
Thank you, Councillor Janet Jones. Executive Member for Truro, Councillor Richard Clark.
Thank you for the question, Janet. Cutting our sixth forms was a member's decision. Rose will have a memory before me on the council. I think it was Children and Leisure Rose Committee, I think, Scrutiny Committee. That became Children and Young People, and we looked at the disparity between sixth forms in the borough, where if you were a student in any of the Pontypool, Westmont and Aberystwyth schools, you didn't have a sixth form to go to. You did if you went to St Albans. And the Cwmbran schools, including Llantarnam, when it was in existence, had sixth forms. So there was a disparity. The members of that committee and then council took the policy decision to go tertiary, and other than in the Welsh school, because of the provision through the Welsh medium, it was determined by council that our sixth forms would go tertiary. In terms of, my glasses have just gone totally blurred, our unverified data for 2023, it shows that 81 learners are currently going to Hereford. This is down from 89 last year and 116 in 2019. So that also shows our figures that 54 learners went to YGG and that some 427 learners went to the Torfaen Learning Zone. Also, 228 learners attended other campuses through Coleg Gwent courses. We are not aware of any decision being made for learners to attend Hereford College as being linked to a lack of suitable courses at Torfaen Learning Zone and across the Coleg Gwent campus, nor are we aware or have there been any concerns expressed with regards to the quality of teaching or tutors. I must take issue with the expression poor tutors. When that goes into the public domain as a question, it doesn't reflect well on teaching staff at the Torfaen Learning Zone, and they have a pretty enough hard job to do. I'm sure that wasn't your intention, Janet, in any way, shape or form. That's not why I'm making a strong issue of it, but it was poor phrasing. The results at Torfaen Learning Zone at the last academic year certainly show a quality. It is about individual choice. Believe it or not, I was a headstrong 16-year-old when I decided what I was going to do for A-levels, and there are still headstrong 16-year-olds who wish to do what they wish to do. And to be fair to Hereford, they are very much in our schools pulling people in because they are businesses at the end of the day, and with these bums on seat, if you use that expression, comes money. Not that I'm calling kids bums on seats, but you know what I mean. We have recently reviewed our post-16 learning partnership agreement, and our focus for post-16 learners focuses on these key principles. Torfaen Learning Zone will be the first choice for parents, carers, post-16 English medium learners in the area and beyond, and YGG will be for Welsh medium learners. All learners will have a smooth and successful transition between school and Coleg Gwent. Outcomes for learners will be at least as good as that for learners in comparable areas in Wales, but we will always strive for even more. And we have a shared commitment to continuous improvement, providing access to high-quality services and learners and their families. We do have a post-16 learning partnership meeting, which I also attend, and there is a greater liaison between the schools and the learning zone. And in particular, schools are interested in what happens to their children, so that information is being disseminated back to them, and through that greater partnership between the schools And as I said about the transition, that's one of the key focuses going forward now, is that transition from year end now to the TLZ next September. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. And please, it was wrong wording. It was no reflection on our tutors or our staff in school. Just a poor wording for which I accept and which I apologise.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Our second question today is Councillor David Thomas to the Executive Member Resources.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Can the Executive Member confirm if there is a process that ensures that local businesses in Torfaen are given the access and support needed to secure council contracts? And if so, are Torfaen businesses prioritised over businesses outside of Torfaen, as there appears to be a trend of Torfaen contracts being let outside of the borough?
Thank you, Councillor Morgan.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas, for your question. It's an important one, as we spend around 110 million annually with third parties. But of course, we've got to balance a lot of factors when making that spend. Value for money for the taxpayer, sustainable supply, and environmental impact are just some of those factors. And they all feature in a fair and transparent approach. We are, though, completely committed to supporting local businesses as much as we can. There's a lot of debate about what is local. Is it Torfaen? Is it Gwent? Is this the city region boundary? Also, what makes a company local? Is it enough, for example, to have an office address in Torfaen? And so within that evolving context, as these definitions are being hammered out, we are working here at the Borough to get a clear and consistent picture of how much of our third-party spend we spend in Torfaen. And only then will we be able to measure the trends over time. I'm not aware of any reliable data on trends, but early indications are that at least 24% of our third-party spend is with organisations with Torfaen postcodes. Just to put that into context, to ensure fairness, our contract standing orders rightly require competition, with opportunities openly advertised. And as Council, we try to advertise as many opportunities as possible via Sell to Wales. And it's really worth all members noting and encouraging local suppliers to register on Sell to Wales so that they see these opportunities as soon as they're advertised. As is the case with all local authorities, we also use established frameworks to identify pre-vetted and approved suppliers where that will be more efficient and effective than open tenders. But for contracts over the threshold of around 220,000, including that, the public contract regulations prevent you from showing any bias toward local suppliers. Our socially responsible procurement strategy for 2022 to 27 was approved by Cabinet in November 2022. It set out some key objectives and the things that we're aiming for. One of those was making procurement spend more accessible to local businesses and the third sector. And to achieve that, our goals are that small businesses and third sector organisations can easily find and access those opportunities to bid for council contracts and are able to bid for opportunities to directly supply the council as Tier 1 suppliers. We want opportunities to be easier to find, and small businesses and the third sector then find it easier to do business with the council, so that they're better placed to secure public sector contracts in Torfaen, but also elsewhere. We want more of our spending to be with local businesses and the third sector, with a greater number of these organisations bidding for and winning contracts with Torfaen Council. I hope that answers your question.
Councillor David Thomas.
Yes, thank you, Madam Presiding Member, and thank you, Councillor Morgan, for your answer to that. Yeah, I just would like to see this council focusing on local businesses. There are a lot of businesses, local businesses in Torfaen, based in Torfaen, that can do what outside businesses can do, and for a much fairer price. So if you could just look at that for me, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Thank you. It takes us to agenda item 15, which is the Cabinet decisions of the 21st of the 11th, 2023. Cabinet decisions start on page 183 and are for the Council to note. There were no challenges to any of the decisions. Is there any members wishing to comment or ask a question on the minutes of the Cabinet? No. Can I ask members if they agree to note these recommendations? Note the Cabinet minutes, please. Thank you. Anybody against? Any abstentions? Thank you. Those Cabinet minutes are noted. That takes us to the date and the time of the next meeting. For your information, members, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 23rd of January, wait for it, 2024, at 10 a.m. That leaves me to wish you all seasonal greetings, a very happy Christmas, and please stay safe. That concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance.